In this video, we're looking at the man, the myth, the legend, old Blue Eyes himself, Frank Sinatra. From musician to Hollywood heartthrob, from suspected gangster to intergalactic space travel, it's a crazy life story that literally reaches the stars. Before we begin, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to support our channel. Mr. Mafioso. How would you describe Frank Sinatra? No nonsense, Italian-American tough guy, those are just a few apt descriptions. But for the FBI, that was enough grounds to suspect him of having links to the mafia. Well, that and the fact that he was friends with quite a few shady characters. The FBI surveyed Frank for a staggering 40 years and collected a whopping 2,403 pages of records documenting his friendships and his activities.
What I do with my life is of my own doing. I live it the best way I can. I've been criticized on many occasions because of acquaintances and what have you.
Frank always denied any connections to the underworld, but it didn't help that one of his closest friends was Chicago mob boss Sam Giancana, a man who rose up the mafia ranks, having started his criminal life as a gunman for Al Capone. He was also accused of receiving gifts from mobsters, as well as making appearances at casinos and weddings of known organised crime bosses. Sinatra was never prosecuted for any crimes related to the mafia, however he was brought before the House Un-American Activities Commission and he was questioned at length, most notably about photos he appeared in with some of the most powerful crime bosses in America. That included, at the time, the man referred to as the Godfather and the boss of bosses, Carlo Gambino. Change for $1. While the 2,403 pages of evidence collected by the FBI never proved that Frank Sinatra was connected to the underworld, it did reveal a few interesting facts, such as the fact that Sinatra himself was targeted countless times with death threats and extortion schemes. One such extortion scheme occurred on December 8, 1963. Frank Jr., Frank Sinatra's son, was kidnapped. The kidnappers demanded a ransom of $240,000 for Frank Jr.'s safe return. Adjusted for inflation, that would be the equivalent to over $2 million today. To avoid being caught, the kidnappers demanded that all contact should be made via payphone. But the problem for Frank was he wasn't used to carrying pocket change, and one time, in the middle of a call, his money ran out. Naturally, this scarred Frank for life, and he was terrified that the mistake had cost the life of his son. Fortunately, it didn't, and Frank paid the ransom, ensuring that Frank Jr. returned home safe. After this experience, Frank Sinatra always carried with him a roll of dimes, vowing never to be without change again. He was even buried with 10 dimes in his pocket. As for the kidnappers, they were quickly caught, tried, and sent to prison. My good side. Psychological scarring isn't the only type of scarring that Frank Sinatra has had to deal with in his life. One particularly nasty scar happened during his birth on December 12, 1915. You see, Frank was a large baby. At the time of his birth, he weighed 13.5 pounds, which is nearly double the average weight of a newborn at 7 pounds. His weight proved to be a challenge for the doctors, who had to deliver him with the aid of forceps. This left Frank with perforated eardrums that would never heal, and also with scars on his left cheek and his neck. Interestingly, one of the rumours that persisted throughout his career was that he dodged being drafted into the army during World War II by bribing a doctor. But that wasn't true. He was actually exempt from conscription because of his punctured eardrums. Frank was also known to hate being photographed from the left side because of the scars on that side of his face. Love life. Frank had a colourful love life and a long list of lovers. He was married 4 times during his life. His first wife was Nancy Barbato, a neighbourhood girl who Frank's mum wanted him to marry. They got married before Frank had really made a name for himself, and at the time, he was actually working as a singing waiter. Their marriage produced all 3 of Frank's children, Nancy, Frank Jr. and Tina. His second marriage was to actress Ava Gardener. The story goes that Frank first saw a picture of Ava in a magazine, and there and then, at that spot, he promised that he would marry her, despite the fact he was actually wed to Nancy at the time. After Ava, his third wife was another actress, Mia Farrow. She was 21 and he was 50 when they tied the knot. His fourth wife was Barbara Marx. Barbara publicly fell out with Frank's children after his death, as they accused her of not bothering to call them when Frank was on his deathbed, preventing them the opportunity to be at their dad's bedside while he passed. Along the way, Frank had many extramarital affairs, including, but not limited to, Julie Garland, Lana Turner and Marilyn Monroe. Still to come, we're going to be talking about the Rat Pack, his movie career and intergalactic space travel. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to support our channel. The Summit.
No. The guy in the back can't hear you. Go ahead, a little more, baby. Loosen up.
Hey. You may be my leader, but I'm gonna punch you right in your mouth.
You've likely heard of the Rat Pack, the musical group comprised of Sammy Davis Jr., Dean Martin, Peter Lawford and Joey Bishop. The leader of the Rat Pack was none other than Frank Sinatra himself. But did you know that the actual members of the group never referred to themselves by that name? Instead, they'd call themselves either the Summit or the Clan. So if the actual group members never coined the term Rat Pack, where did the name come from? Well, one theory is the name comes from Lauren Bacall, the wife of Humphrey Bogart. One day, Bogart and the members of the group were returning from a night out on the town, and Lauren was stated to have said, "You look like a goddamn Rat Pack." Regardless of the name, Frank's role as a civil rights advocate, standing up not just for his friend and bandmate Sammy Davis Jr., but also for many other African American musicians of the time, it has to be praised. During a time when America was segregated, Frank Sinatra used his influence to help promote African American musicians and make sure that they were paid well and treated fairly. Mr. Showbiz. Being friends with Humphrey Bogart, one of the greatest American classical actors of all time, wasn't the only connection that Frank Sinatra had to Hollywood.
Who's the broad?
It's my sister.
During his time, Frank had a somewhat successful movie career. In total, he had 20 movies that grossed more than $100 million at the domestic box office when adjusted to today's inflation. 3 of his movies, The House I Live In, The Manchurian Candidate and From Here to Eternity, were added to the Library of Congress's National Film Registry. Not to mention that The House I Live In was awarded both a Golden Globe and an Academy Award. And you'd be right in thinking that such success should have made him a top contender for films like Dirty Harry, The Odd Couple, North by Northwest, amongst many others. But for one reason or another, the studios kept on deciding to pass him for these roles, and this really angered Frank, who was desperate to land another big gig. Another role that Sinatra really wanted to play was that of Vito Corleone in what's widely regarded as one of the greatest films ever made, The Godfather. The role ultimately went to Marlon Brando, but director Francis Ford Coppola admitted that he did seriously consider Frank for the role.
Anyway, if I had this part in the picture, it puts me right back up on top again.
And that's not the only connection between Frank and The Godfather. The character of Johnny Fontaine, a singer who wants to break into Hollywood, was heavily inspired by Frank Sinatra. The similarities were so clearly visible that when Frank met the writer of the novel and the scriptwriter, Mario Puzo, at a dinner party, he reportedly shouted abuse at him and told him that if he hadn't been so much older than him, he would have beaten the hell out of him. The Sultan of Swoon. The only thing to overshadow Frank Sinatra's movie career is Frank Sinatra's music career. Frank began singing at a young age. He got his big break after his mother was able to convince a local singing group known as the Three Flashes to let him join. By 1946, he'd already had several hit singles under his belt and a growing fan base. His fans were named the Bobby Soxers due to the style of socks that they wore and their love for him that earned him nicknames like the Sultan of Swoon. But credit for his fan base needs to go at least partially to his publicist George Evans. Cleverly, George would audition girls, pay them $5 and then place them strategically in the audience to help create excitement. And what did the audition consist of, I hear you ask? Well, in order to earn the money, he'd test them to see how loud they could scream. My Way. As with all great stories, Frank Sinatra's ending would come on May 14th, 1998. At the age of 82, he would sadly die from a heart attack. In honour of the legend, the lights at the Empire State Building were turned blue, lights were dimmed at the Las Vegas Strip, and casinos stopped spinning for a minute. 400 mourners attended his funeral in Beverly Hills, and thousands of fans lined the streets outside. Frank's legacy still lives strong. To this day, his song My Way remains one of the most played songs at funerals anywhere in the world, including non-English speaking countries. In honour of his rendition of the song Fly Me to the Moon, a song that he famously covered, astronomers named an asteroid after him, asteroid 7934 Sinatra, and it travels the stars. So, what's your favourite Frank Sinatra song? Let us know down in the comments below. And don't forget, if you enjoyed this video, show your support by subscribing and checking out some of our other videos. Thanks for watching, catch you on the next video.